Okay, my friends, I am jumping in on this thing about President Trump's allegations against certain medications and, the whole issue with health. I'm a researcher. I give no medical advice whatsoever. I am going to report to you what I have discovered in a broad spectrum of studies as an observational person. All right, I didn't do these studies myself. In most cases, some I did. And one of them was with the observational autism study working with Northern Ireland, Marguerite. However, they're talking about pain and, infections, inflammation, and taking Tylenol. Now, is there any evidence to support either side of that it's not harmful or it is harmful? I don't know. So I started looking into it. But my way of doing things is, why are these women having these issues? Why are they having pain and inflammation? And where is the pain? Is it just overall everywhere in their body pain, or is it specific to a certain region? Is it in the gut, or is it, I want the details. So I started searching the details, and here's what I found. This is the crazy part. What I'm sure they're not thinking about is enzymes. Enzymes are the things that create the chemistry. Without the enzymes, you don't get the chemistry. Enzymes are very specific to temperatures. That's why when you have something cool in a refrigerator, the enzymes don't function. They don't break down the products. And when you get real hot, above 104 degrees or so Fahrenheit, they get denatured. See, denaturing takes place. So it goes up, and then at this optimal temperature, let's say, is probably about 103 or so. All right, that enzyme really is reactive. And then when you hit 104, right down to nothing, it just dies out because it becomes denatured. Straight down. So there's a very, very serious temperature sensitivity to enzymes. So what is an infection? What does that do? An infection creates heat. Inflammation, they call it. Inflamed. At 104 degrees or so, I don't know what the temperature is when you get inflamed. I don't have any inflammation going on. But if you get inflamed and you check that temperature, if it's like 104 degrees, the enzymes aren't working anymore, which is maybe your good enzymes don't work anymore, or maybe it's killing the enzymes that are attacking you, because what the attackers are going to be enzymes. The enzymes are the things that do the chemistry. Enzymes break things down like instantly, just like that. In 1 second, with the proper enzyme, you can do more chemistry than it would take in 1 million and sometimes 1 billion years. In 1 second, bam, done. And then it goes to the next. Click, 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 right around. That's called click chemistry, and an enzyme doesn't get used up. It just keeps attacking until it destroys all the things that it has to destroy, whether it's breaking food down or whether it's killing invaders. All right, this is just research. I'm not telling you to do or don't do anything, but temperature, heat during pregnancy can cause hypothermia and elevated core body temperature, and it gets to a certain temperature, it critically affects enzymes. That's the key. Enzymes are the only thing that do chemistry, and they're essential for fetal development. Heat can cause these proteins to denature, and they denature at, let's say, about 104 degrees, something like that. They can lose their structure, impairs their function, disrupts the biological process they regulate. They regulate everything. Enzymes regulate every single thing in your body, 100%. Without the enzymes, the chemistry cannot happen. All right, the disruption can increase risks of adverse outcomes like congenital heart defects, neural tube defects, miscarriage, particularly during the first trimester. Now, why are you getting these increased temperatures? And I say it's the other way around. It's the temperature affecting the enzymes, or is it the enzymes are being affected, so your temperature's going up? I believe the enzymes in the bacteria that create the enzymes are the issue. All right, and the temperature is a response to that. Now, whether or not it's something in a pregnancy that puts some chemistry in your body that affects some of your bacteria, it might, because you get hormonal changes, they get depression, they get all kinds of things, which is all chemistry, and that's all enzymes. Okay, most every species of bacteria in your body create an enzyme, which is balled up in this little ribosome. So the bacteria with a single cell, little tiny buggers, I mean just tiny, they create these tiny ribosomes. These are so tiny that more than 1 million of these can fit inside one single animal cell, which is like this. This is what an animal cell is. Inside this cell, ribosomes inside here, you could have up to 1 million of them, in addition to all the other stuff, the mitochondria, everything. And they primarily congeal in this rough endoplasmic reticulum. It's like a labyrinth going through here to get to the nucleus. So anyway, you could have over 1 million of them in here. Now, they're there to do a job. These are chemistry sets. It's just like having a whole batch of chemistry sets just waiting. They don't poop. They don't eat. They're just there. Now, something triggers them. So there's these little tiny balls, which I showed you coming from the bacteria, which is these guys right here. And there's at least 75,000 different types of ribosomes. That means there has to be at least 75,000 different types of bacteria create them, because they all create specialized ribosomes. And when I show you what's in that little ball there, it's going to freak you out, because inside that ball is a chemistry set that's so elegant, it's amazing. And there can be millions of those balls in one single cell. And inside of each human body, there is trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of cells. Just think, if you broke it down to how many little components there is, it's just beyond the human mind to be able to accept it. Now, here's these balls coming in, the ribosomes. A trigger happens. What that is, I don't know. Something breaks through that chemistry and breaks the sheath. So it must hit something that like puts a crack in it, and pow, it pops open. So here it comes in as a ball like this with a plastic bag around it, basically. And it hits something, and it pulls one or two of these off, and it goes ding, and it just pops out of here like this. All right, now, if it is an enzyme is a big, very, very fancy molecule. All right, and it's extreme. I'll show you how extremely fancy it is in a moment. A protein is also a product of a ribosome. Yes. Is it an enzyme? Yes and no. These break things. These hit other things and they break them into pieces. So if you eat a carrot, you can't digest a carrot. You need to break apart the iron and break apart the this and the that and the other thing. And this is what these things do. They attack your food for digestion. So if you don't have the right bacteria in your body, you're not going to be able to digest. You're going to have gas and bloating and diarrhea, vomiting, all gut distress is what's going to happen if you don't have the right enzymes. Now, what else can happen? Well, if you don't have the right proteins, what's going to happen there? The proteins take the product of the enzymes, which are the break breakers, they break things, and the proteins take them and they make things. So what are proteins? Well, they're muscle and tendon and eyeballs and earlobes and, you know, every structural component in your body is made from proteins. And everything that breaks things, we're going to call enzymes. Now, viruses are also enzymes. Now, enzymes can do two different things. Enzymes and viruses, let's say they do exactly the same thing. They're built the same way. In my mind, that's exactly what it is. An enzyme pretty much breaks down food and does all that kind of stuff. Think about it that way. And a virus actually takes over a bacteria and reprograms it. Basically, that's all it is. The bacteria is nothing but spitting out a program. You see this right here, look. This is exactly what a bacteria does. It creates this little package coming out here called the ribosome. Well, what does the ribosome consist of? It's all these little polypeptide chains. And there's 20 different amino acids. And they have to arrange in exactly a certain order. And that order comes out in a string. Sometimes they're long, sometimes they're short. Messenger RNA gets programmed and it breaks into the DNA to create immunities. This is like an immunity thing. Well, the other thing does, it comes out and these ribosomes break down food and do all the other things. They attack invaders and do all that. But this is the program. This is how we reprogram ourselves. But who did the program? The bacteria. The bacteria was the one that programmed it. Now, a virus can come in and program this bacteria to spit out nasty stuff. And that's how you get invaded, and then it spreads through your body, because now the bacteria itself is reprogrammed to do the job of the bad guy. So it's a good guy, bad guy thing. But if the bad guy comes in, and you got good guys in there, he's never going to be able to take over. Your bacteria has to be good and it's sufficient continuously. So you can, once you get hit with antibiotics or some certain types of other things inside your body to kill the bacteria that are in your body, once those bacteria are gone, sometimes you can't reestablish them easily. Sometimes not at all. And that's what leads to these long COVID, in my opinion. Now what we need to do is test for the bacteria that's in the gut. That's the first thing we need, is a database of that. And if you have somebody that's chronically fatigued or they're in some chronic condition, just check the database and see if there's any major bacteria issue, because that's the only thing that creates the chemistry. You don't get the chemistry without the bacteria. It's just not going to happen. It's not a big, hard thing to understand. If this thing is dead, the ribosome is supposed to squirt out here, done. Not going to happen. If you don't have the ribosome, what happens? You don't have the enzyme. It's not there. This can't happen. That can't happen. This can't happen. Which bacteria did you just kill? Which one was it? These are the shapes and arrangements. These are how they invade and do all kinds of special things. And you know, it's a cocktail of mixes of fibers and chemistry and molecular attachments. And this is it right here. This is they're just like little tiny magnets. Not a whole big difference there. But they have to form in a certain way, and there's 20 different hits on this. On these here, there's 20 different amino acids. So when you program this, you got 20 codes, 20 codes, 20 codes, 20 codes. The amount of information in a series of these polypeptide chains is just staggering. And we run on a program. And I'm telling you right now, your memory, your emotions, your structural composition, your intelligence, everything is from chemistry. You don't have the right chemistry, you're done. Now, you can have the right chemistry, but you have to use it correctly. You can't just have the right chemistry and not use it, especially with the fascia and the movement of the support structure of the body. And that's where we come back to the pregnancy here. And, you know, we were talking about extreme effects in a pregnancy, and a lot of it is due to enzymes. Those are the proteins. They have three-dimensional shapes and da-da-da-da-da. And just like I told you, these are the things that regulate everything about you. Hormonal disruption, heat stress can upset the delicate balance regulating the enzymes. Now, this is where it gets really tricky. Animal study shows that heat exposure can cause changes in hormone levels. Now, where's the heat coming from? If you're just sitting there and all of a sudden you're getting hot, as a pregnant woman apparently does, in some cases, and then that changes the enzymes, so the hormone levels change, and you might get really aggressive, or you might get withdrawn or emotional, and who knows what's going to happen. But it's in these hormone changes. People understand that. I think they understand what hormones do to a person's personality primarily. And they're vital for a healthy pregnancy. Disrupting the enzyme-driven synthesis of progesterone can lead to lower levels of this crucial hormone. Now, increased inflammation, high temperatures, and air pollution can create inflammation and interfere with blood to the placenta. Now, high temperatures and air pollution. High temperatures, so if you want to stay in a cool room, apparently, and keep your body cooled down. And of course, air pollution is not a good thing, no matter what. But is that what creates the inflammation? Well, it could. And it would interfere with blood flow to this placenta. Well, I suppose. It can be linked to changes in enzyme-controlled immune and inflammatory pathways. This is where I'm going with this. It says it can be linked to changes in the enzyme-controlled immune and inflammatory pathways. Well, what if the enzyme-controlled immune and inflammatory pathways link back the other way around? Because basically I see they have things mostly backwards when it comes to understanding the cause and effect of disease. I say it's the enzymes in the interstitium that are the things that you're missing. And because you're missing them, it indicates you're missing a bacteria. And why are you missing a bacteria? And how could we test? All we have to do is take fecal analysis and get a good database of what's normal, healthy, and then see what yours is and compare it. It's just not... Anyway. And this should be done regularly to a woman while she's in the birthing process. Now, there's some things you can't really do much to about, which is pain. And mostly that's the pain that I'm hearing about, or during my research here, is related to a woman's stretching and her, the baby growing inside her body, basically. Now here, this is just normal. There's not really much you can do about it, I don't think. Although, just gentle stretching. You never ever want to hurt yourself while you're stretching. If you feel pain, you just popped a little muscle or a little tendon. Now, and that's painful. And then it takes a while to heal. So just because pain is not good, let me put it that way. Now, the most common type of pain in pregnancy include back pain, leg cramps, and abdominal pelvic pain, like round ligament pain, and Braxton Hicks contractions. Back pain results from hormonal changes and increased weight. Well, the hormonal changes, yes, that's going to affect everything in your body. And increased weight, yes. But if you're in good shape and your muscles are in good strength, have good strength, and your fascia is loose, your tendons have the ability to stretch a little more than the average person. The average person just barely do this. If you can get really good and stretchy, you see people can bend their legs back around their head and all kind of crazy things. Well, their tendon is like that. And yours is like this. And if it's like this, you're in pain. And especially as your body starts to do this, and this can only do that, you're in real pain. Tendons can be extremely painful. Believe me, I went through this whole thing of almost losing my flexibility entirely. And I healed myself basically. I still have back pain, but nothing like I had. And the whole key to what I discovered for myself, and again, I'm not recommended to do anything or don't do anything, was I lay in bed and I will pull my knees up to my abdomen, very, very, very slowly. If you, like I said, if you feel a sharp like this, you just caused the pain. You didn't help anything. And I mean, when I'm talking slow, I'm talking an inch in a minute, 2 minutes, just barely. And you just keep getting more and more and more and more. And slow down. It takes a while. For me, this is what happened to me. And now I can lift my legs up off the floor, my knees almost up to my chest. Before, I just couldn't hardly get them off the floor. You get glued up. There's all these Slurpee, it's called, inside your tendons. And they have to be able to do this and this and this, and it has to be real slippery. And when they start to get glued together, they get glued. That's why you see cats and dogs and animals, they get up in the morning, and they stretch. And you see them just stay like that for sometimes, I don't know, a little while. And then they'll be good to go. Now, they do it regularly every day. And many times during the day, you'll see them do that. If they lay down for a while, they get up and they stretch. So anyway, that's something I really can't advise one way or the other. Or even, I'm not advising anything to anybody. I'm just telling you, that's the kind of pain you may have. You may have to just sort of live with that pain, or like I say, if you're flexible enough, you may not even get that pain. But that's the key. To be in, you got to have the strength. So your muscles have to be strong enough, and you have to have the flexibility. So you have to have that movement in these tendons, and that gives them that slipperiness so that they can move against each other. Because they're doing this all day long. Anytime you move, a tendon is moving against another tendon, and there's a slurp in there, and it's called synovial fluid. And it's the slipperiest thing on the face of the planet. Synovial fluids in humans, hundreds of times more slippery than Teflon on Teflon. That's the coefficient of friction. And that's the fluids that are in I call them Slurpees, small leucine-rich proteins. It's slippery as can be. So anyway, they're talking about 50 to 80% of women have pain in the pelvic area. Well, I can imagine. So anyway, that's there's a lot of reasons for pain. You can't just pin it down. But the first thing I would be concerned about is good digestion. Because your baby needs all of these little products. And you do not get the products if you don't have the bacteria. It's not going to happen. And there's 75,000 different species. There's 75,000 different enzymes. Every one of them creates a product. Every enzyme creates a product. or kills an invader, one or the other. It's that elegant little chemistry set. And at about 104 degrees, it goes brrr, and just falls apart. It's denatured. I know we talked about that. So there's a lot to talk about here and consider. Now, what's the role of acetaminophen in this whole thing? Well, they say it reduces the temperature and it cuts back on the pain. Well, how does it exactly do that? Do they know? I don't think they know. A lot of these drugs they know it does it, but they don't know really how. All right, as I say, virtually everything boils down to enzymes. They don't know how this acetaminophen works. It says acetaminophen as well as NSAIDs and aspirin are thought to affect this regulatory center to decrease body temperature. Again, the mechanism speculated to be the blocking of the COX enzyme. All right, so 98.6 is supposed to be where all your enzymes are right at their perfect temperature to do their job. You go to 104 degrees and the enzymes stop working in a lot of cases. But they're talking about this particular acetaminophen appears to work up inside the brain and regulate pain throughout the body by blocking this COX enzyme, which would be way up in the brain because it doesn't have enough energy to block throughout the entire body. It has to work up on the source. That's what they claim. And let me just be sure that I'm stating this correctly. Hold on. All right, yes. Most drugs work at the site of the pain. This does not have enough juice to work that way. It says blocking the enzyme at the cause of the pain is the mechanism by which, this says right at the cause of the pain, is how these NSAIDs work. But the effect of the acetaminophen, which is the Tylenol, at the pain site, which is different now. These guys work at the pain site. Acetaminophen at the pain site is too weak to be responsible for the relief of the pain. So, they say, however, the acetaminophen might block the enzyme production in the brain, blocking the further transmission of pain nerve impulses. At your brain, there's a switch that turns on and off. It says, hey, I'm feeling some pain, whoa, whoa, whoa. And that's supposed to regulate your response to that pain, which apparently could be increased temperature. You know, they're saying elevated body temperature. So anyway, there's a lot to think about here. A fever occurs when something, infection or other causes, triggers the master body control in the brain, thermoregulatory center in the hypothalamus to reset core body temperature above the usual 98.6. So something happens to make it want to go higher. Acetaminophen, as well as the NSAIDs and aspirin, are thought to affect this regulatory center to decrease body temperature. Again, the mechanism is speculated to be the blocking of the COX enzyme. It's all about enzymes. So now what would block that? The only thing that could block that is another enzyme. You don't just block it and just say, okay, you can't come through here. Why? Another enzyme blocks it. What is the enzyme that blocks it? All right, enzymes are the only thing that do the chemistry in your body. The only thing that works fast enough to do the chemistry. You know, and a lot of it is methylation. If something isn't methylated, or it is methylated, well, methylation works backwards. In other words, it's got to be unmethylated to be turned on. It's got to be methylated to be turned off, I believe. Yeah, see, they always say, oh, it's the genes, you guys got a bad genes. No, it's not, no. You have to be not methylated. Methylation does not turn on genes. It primarily turns off or silences them by adding a methyl group to the DNA, preventing the binding of proteins necessary for the gene activation. What's the proteins? The proteins are basically the enzymes that we talked about before. All right, they're going to bind. They're like building blocks, the proteins. They don't go and break things. They come and bind. So the gene. So in other words, it silences them by adding the methyl groups, which are bind, so that the gene can't activate. Well, the removal of methyl groups allows genes to be activated. So they have to pull them off of there, and then something comes in and activates them. DNA methylation itself is a repressive process, stabilizes gene repression, especially at the start site of the gene. So they have to, something like as a blocking. Methylation does not turn on genes, and methylation turns off the DNA group. Wow, this gets confusing. Anyway, methylation does not turn on genes, methylation turns off genes. So they have to be methylated to be working. If they're not methylated, they're not going to work. And the only way you can methylate them is to have an enzyme. I know that's confusing, but that's just the way life is. Now, all we are is a program. DNA is nothing more than a program. And you turn on and off certain sections of the program, you access them or deny them access. It's as simple as that. And that's what this methylation is. It turns off genes. Demethylation turns genes on. So all kinds of things affect this. Environmental factors impact the amount of the protein and cell. Well, not only that, enzymes, which are from the bacteria. Now, I took genomics at some fancy university. It'll come to me. But anyway, Johns Hopkins, and I took genomics there. You know, it's nothing more than programs. There's little programs, and they say, oh, the gene controls this gene controls that. Well, it has to be turned on. First of all, here's the key with genes. You got a program sequence. You look at it and you say, oh, that's not the correct sequence. Well, it may be defective. Yes, I can't say it's not. But there's other factors in there that would have led to it being defective, first of all, because it didn't have what it needed when it needed what it needed, because of some other environmental factor that the bacteria just wasn't there to create the gene, to create the enzyme which made the gene work. So that's very possible. Kids have all kinds of digestive issues now with little kids. All kinds of problems with their digestion. If their digestion is not good from day one, they're in trouble. They need some bacteria. They need some digestive juices in there to react to the environment that they're in. And usually they get that from their mother, from licking the floor and all that stuff. It gets into their body. And they're being born in sterile environments now. We're being very careful not to get them all slathered up. They should have poop all over them, in their ears, in their eyes, in their mouth, everywhere. That's how they're going to get, to a certain degree. The animals don't. Animals are fine with that stuff. They lick all over the babies. And the babies, they have all kinds of stuff going on there. And that is what makes them healthy, basically. That's my feeling of it, and that's just my own opinion, and I'm not saying that anybody do anything this way or that way. But that was always the way that you got your immunities. And you got them based on the area that you were being brought up in. That's why you used to go out of the country somewhere to where they have different water. They don't drink the water. Well, why? Because they have other bacteria in there you're not going to be able to deal with. They're going to try to get into your system. It's all about you being protected by your environment, having your own body defenses, and being able to digest the food that you're eating. And they have found out now that replacing the microbiome bacteria has led to unbelievable results. Even peanut butter allergies, they found that it helps in peanut butter allergies. And I mean, literally everything, right across the board. If you put in, and that's what's called a fecal matter transplant, FMT. You put in just about anything, an FMT, and it'll say, yes, it shows promise, but needs more research. Now that's been going on for a very long time. And it's right now, it's not medical practice. They won't allow you to have it unless you have C. difficile, and that's because that's basically the only really good treatment for C. difficile. And I think you still have to take the drugs and fail the drugs 3 times before they'll let you have the fecal matter transplant. And then it's a pretty certainty that you're going to be fixed. So I think we should start by trying to understand the bacteria that's in a good, healthy person. And then just do a bacterial swab. It's not a big thing. And now with these CMOS in the cell phones, you might be able to take a picture of the poop, send it off to AI, and it'll analyze all the different frequencies, and every single different frequency can be a different bacteria. And if you got too much of the yellow frequency and nobody else has that, and you have some, well, you know what I'm saying, you're going to see a certain database of what's normal. And if you're way up here and everybody else is down here and you've got whatever disease, and everybody else is way up here has the same disease, you got to change that. Well, how do you do it? Sometimes it'll be low, you got to bring it back up. Sometimes it's too high, you got to bring it back down. Sometimes it'll be too high and you'll see another one will be too high. The two of them together work together, or one of them be low and this one be high. Whatever. It gives you a place to start to understand what is affecting your body. And this is about methylation. But anyway, again, this is just research. But you know, Trump and the rest of them, and everybody in the world now is trying to come up with a solution for this terrible, terrible increase in autism. And it is bad. And it's not just because they're seeing it in a new light that, oh, it's just a spectrum now, it's all the same as it always was. No, absolutely not. There's a much, much, much increase in the severity. And yes, the spectrum, I agree. But the severity is just stunning. And there are certain places where it's really bad. Now, why is it really bad? Is something in the food there? Is it something in the water? Something in the air? All of those things will affect the bacteria in your body. Because whatever you put in your body can either make your bacteria thrive or kill it. And if you kill it, you just lost your enzymes. You lose your enzymes, you're in trouble. You lose your enzyme, your bacteria, you don't get your enzymes. You don't get immune. You can't fight back. You don't have the proteins. You don't have the digestion. And it all boils down to this guy right here, the bacteria, making those right there, and there can be millions in one single human cell. And they just float around your body. They don't eat, don't poop, and they react instantly. And when they do, the chemistry is just stunning. I think I showed you, or maybe I didn't. That is what happens when this pops open. Every one of these is a magnetic signature. Every little tip at the top of the boom. And if it's not exactly identical to that, and I mean identical, it doesn't work. It becomes denatured. And what makes it not identical? Well, sometimes it's too much heat, and the heat goes, and that's it, done. But other than that, they like just to go, click chemistry around. Everything that it hits, it reacts with if it has the same signature that it's looking for. And it just kills it all, or breaks it, or whatever it does to it. And that's the way these enzymes work. And once again, this is just research. I'm not recommending do this, don't do that. But if you don't have the right bacteria in your body, you're not going to be healthy. And the only way we're ever going to know is to have a database. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you. I love you all.